Welcome back to What If, where we take a look at alternate universe What If and Elseworld stories from the great big multiverse of comics. Today we're going to be looking at What If issue 46 from the very first volume of the Marvel series, which asks the question, what if Spider-Man's Uncle Ben had lived? Let's get started. Rain pelts down from the sky, soaking the ground as a saddened Peter Parker stands before a headstone. Tears fall down his face as he kneels, knowing that he failed them, that they should have someone they could be proud to carry their memory. All you've got is Spider-Man, Peter thinks, walking away. He moves through the graveyard, apologizing as he returns to his companion. Uncle Ben looks out from beneath his umbrella, putting his hand on his nephew's shoulder and telling him that he understands. They both walk away, leaving behind the grave of Aunt May. In this world, the Watcher looks down, seeing events play out both similarly and differently than they do on Earth 616. A bump in the night is heard in the Parker residence as usual, but instead of Uncle Ben getting up to discover a burglar in their home, it is Aunt May. Shocked, the coward shoots her, dashing out into the night. Responding to the noise, Uncle Ben rushes downstairs to find his wife, lifeless, on the ground. He holds her for a while, later seeing Peter fleeing the cop, informing him of the grave news. Unbeknownst to Ben, Peter is on his way to confront the killer of his now late aunt. Days pass, and their lives go on. Uncle Ben and Peter had a very different dynamic than that of he and Aunt May. This is made clear when a group of Peter's friends arrive at the Parker residence. While Aunt May would have ignored the obnoxious Flash Thompson's comments about pipsqueak Peter Parker, Uncle Ben confronts the bully, sending him packing. "Flash, you're a football star. Let me give you something to ponder. What's below the surface? Try peeling a layer sometime and find out." Later that night, Uncle Ben looks up into the night sky, seeing Spider-Man swinging by, and is stunned. The next morning, Ben tells Peter that he agrees with J. Jonah Jameson's hit pieces on Spider-Man. He has no right to go outside the law. Peter, of course, disagrees with his uncle, defending the wall crawler. Uncle Ben further explains his side. Maybe it's the fact that Spider-Man hides behind a mask, not taking responsibility for what he does. Peter leaves the house, sadly, telling Ben that, "It seems to me that a guy like Spider-Man knows all about responsibility." Weeks pass, and the pair are prepping for dinner. Uncle Ben, seemingly without pretense, asks his nephew to change the tablecloth. When Peter sweeps back the cloth, however, he is shocked to see his Spider-Man costume beneath. Peter fumbles through excuses, while Ben simply states that they should talk. He's known for weeks. The two go into the living room, where Peter reveals everything to his uncle. He tells him that it was his fault that he didn't stop the burglar earlier that day, but Ben turns inward, angry that he slept through the entire event. "I think Spider-Man is doing the right thing," he tells his nephew, pulling him in for a hug. From now on, they are in this together. The events of Spider-Man's life pass by much as they do on the 616. He continues his crime-fighting career, eventually facing some of his strongest villains. Sandman, Lizard, Green Goblin, Vulture, Electro, and Big Man. They all pass by as if in a blur. Many in the city come to see Spider-Man as a hero, but not everyone. J. Jonah Jameson still seems to have it out for the wall crawler. This angers Uncle Ben. Peter, walking along the ceiling, tells his uncle not to worry about it, that it's just Jameson blowing his stack. But Ben can't put up with the man tearing down his nephew again and again. Quickly, Uncle Ben makes his way to the Daily Bugle, storming into the editor's office. "Why do you keep trying to tar and feather someone who's trying to help?" Jameson doesn't back down. "Spider-Man is a limelight, crazy ex-TV star who took to crime fighting when his ratings began to slip." His ears burning, the wall crawler slips in through the window, trying to tell Uncle Ben to ease off, but the old man tells his nephew that he is only doing this for his own good, to which Peter slumps over and backs down. Jameson is shocked at the power Ben has over the wall crawler, but is even more shocked moments later when Ben and Peter reveal his identity to him. "We've just put his fate in your hands," Ben tells him as the two leave the office. Jameson doesn't know what to do. Pacing back and forth in his office, his mind flip-flops over the moral decision to either keep the secret or his journalistic integrity. Finally, he makes his decision. "I can milk this thing for millions in circulation," he exclaims. Time continues to pass, and now the Bugle is everywhere, reporting Spider-Man's crime fighting throughout the city, always the first on the scene. One day, Peter enters the office to discover Betty Brant, the woman that he is secretly in love with, crying. Peter attempts to console her, but she explains there's nothing he can do. It's just a money problem. Wishing to help the woman he cares for, however, Peter slips her some cash. He then goes into Jameson's office, hearing the editor tell him that he needs Betty followed. Her brother's been hanging around some sleazy characters, he tells him. Peter refuses, angry at Jameson. The editor smiles and takes a puff from his cigar. I think you'll do it, unless you want Peter Parker to become very famous very quickly. Angrily, Peter lifts Jameson up with his super strength, but leaves before he does something he'll regret. He heads home in a puff, but is met with Uncle Ben, who also believes that he should follow Betty, having gained some intel from some old friends at the police station. So that night, Peter stands on the roof, angry that his life is being ran into the ground by two old men. He finally decides to follow Betty, but only to prove the men wrong. Peter is shocked to discover that maybe Ben and Jameson were right after all. He sees Betty picking up Dr. Octopus when he is getting out of jail and driving the supervillain into Philadelphia. Spider-Man follows them, finding Betty and her brother bringing Otto and the mobster Blackie Gaxton together for a meeting on a shipping tanker. Spider-Man leaps in, knocking the mobster out cold. Quickly, the wall crawler follows Dr. Octopus, but the fight doesn't last long, and Spider-Man is knocked into the water. When he pulls himself free, Betty and her brother try to thank the hero for saving them, but Spider-Man pushes them away, angry, with not only them, but himself. Back in New York, Peter stares at the sunrise, torn with his love for Betty. His feelings for her kept him going, but now, I've just torn the last bit of Peter Parker to shreds, and all that's left is the mask of Spider-Man. Days pass, and no one has seen or heard from Peter. Having practically given up his civilian life, the wall crawler sleeps in his webbing in an alley. Uatu, ever watching, states, "His costume smells, and he hasn't eaten anything that can be called a meal in days. When he sleeps, he cries out in his dreams." But the hero is awakened when a local small-time stoolie throws a rock at him. It seems that Jameson wants to talk, or he is planning on revealing his identity in the morning paper. Peter begrudgingly swings away. Shocked that Jameson knows Spider-Man's identity, the stoolie thinks that this information might be useful to the Green Goblin. Arriving at the Daily Bugle, Jameson informs Peter that he needs Spider-Man out there making headlines, not wallowing in self-pity. Peter agrees, but mostly to shut up Jonah. Later that same day, the two are at the hospital to check in on and get a news story from Jonah's son, the astronaut who came back from space infected with space spores. Suddenly, though, without warning, the room explodes and in flies the Green Goblin. The Goblin snatches up Jonah and flies away, declaring that if Spider-Man wants his secret safe and this man alive, he'll meet me where we last fought. John Jameson tries to convince Peter to find Spider-Man, but Peter knows that Spider-Man hates Jonah and wouldn't lift a finger to save him. Because of this, John decides to save his father himself, and as he becomes angry, the space spores react and make him bigger and stronger. With his new powers, John charges out of the hospital. In his lair, the Green Goblin tries to get Jonah to tell him the secret identity of Spider-Man, but the two are interrupted when John comes charging through the wall. He and the Goblin fight briefly, but soon John gets the upper hand, knocking Gobby out with one punch. Jonah, excited, tells his son to come untie him, but John seems confused and lashes out at his own father. Luckily, Spider-Man arrives, distracting John. He knocks the big man into an electrical box, and the resulting shock seems to knock the spores out of John's system. Spider-Man frees Jonah and tells the old man that he owes him one. The next day, Uncle Ben is surprised to discover that nothing is mentioned of Spider-Man in the paper, with the headline merely saying that John saved his father. Peter comes into the kitchen, and Ben is happy to see his nephew. He pulls him in close, telling him, "I know I've made as many mistakes as you. Maybe more." But Peter stops his uncle, telling him that they'll get by. They always do. And we'll do it together. And that concludes What If issue 46. This is a fun story to me, honestly. I like the characterization of Uncle Ben here, especially in comparison to Aunt May. They both clearly figured out Peter's secret early on, but Ben, being a little more bullheaded and confrontational, revealed his knowledge of the double life far earlier than May did. Also, Jameson turning Spider-Man into a stooge for the Daily Bugle is... it's just really funny to me. Like, of course he would, especially at that point in their relationship where Jameson doesn't really know that much about Peter. Like, they're not stepbrothers at this point. Anyway, thank you so much for watching What If. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave any suggestions for future episodes in the comments below. See you next time.